Hello, inmates, and welcome to the cellblock Scorch, week 222A. This is Bones, and I'm recording as the winner of this week's Scorch. This week's prompt was given by Styx, and it was Fate? No, just one road of many. When I saw this prompt, I knew the universe I was going to write in immediately because I actually have a universe wherein fate, luck, and karma are all actual beings that have some sway over what happens. In fact, you've heard a few Scorches with these characters. It's one of my most established universes that's been kicking around my head since literally high school. The Maestroverse. Weeks 4 and 10 of the Scorch have focused on these characters as well, but those were both random, funny side story snippets, and this one has a lot more to do with the actual plot and impetus of the story. So I'm just going to read this to you, and then I'll explain a bit about what's going on afterwards. This piece is entitled Week. Wake up, sleepyhead. It had been a few weeks since Maestro had had a good night's sleep. The nightmares had been getting worse, from once every few weeks to every night without fail. The one where there was something warm and wet seeping between his toes, and the weight of dirt being piled above him. The one with the smell of magnolia flowers, and the walls being painted red with each passing splatter, Zach's laugh reverberating through an ever-shrinking space. It had barely started today, when the voice interrupted. Maestro came to, chest heaving in panic. He was suffocating, a terrible weight pressing down on him. "Hey, calm down," the voice came again, and the feeling of someone's hand patting his cheek, making Maestro realize that he was not, in fact, being compressed by ever-mounding dirt. The weight was warm, and not evenly distributed. Someone was lying on him. With a groggy hum, he grasped the hand still resting on his cheek, brow furrowing. Had Randall noticed his bad dreams? He'd been so sure to keep it secret. "Wow, you're even cuter when you're half asleep," the voice chuckled, and Maestro's eyes flew open as he jolted upright, shoving whoever it was off him. It was not Randall. It couldn't be, because they didn't live together anymore. The person hit the ground with a pout, looking nothing more than inconvenienced at their sudden change of position. "What the— Luck!" Maestro spat when he recognized them, pinching the bridge of his nose in a vain hope that it would stave off his headache. Luck grinned, giving a cheeky wave. "How are you here?" "Well, strictly speaking, I'm actually not," they admitted, shimmying over to prop their head back on the bed. "I just thought you'd appreciate a different dream every now and then." "A different dream," Maestro repeated bitterly, falling back and pressing the heels of his palms into his eyes. It wasn't something he deserved. "Don't be like that," Luck whined, nudging at Maestro's leg. Maestro swatted half-heartedly at their hand. "You should go back home, you know. You aren't—" "Like I can," he snarled, tearing at his own hair. Luck hopped up onto the bed and pulled his hands away. "This is fate, remember?" Maestro shoved at them as Luck attempted to soothe him somehow. "I don't have a choice." "Fate," Luck rolled their eyes, features beginning to fluctuate. "Eric, honestly, you can't believe everything they tell you." "Maestro," he corrected with a half-hearted growl, covering his ears and giving up trying to push the deity off. Luck took the opportunity to drape over him, their faces inches apart. "Maestro," Luck chided, "you seem to forget that I am here. Fate and luck are equally powerful forces. As long as you have luck, there's no such thing as fate. An easier path, perhaps, but never the only one." Maestro squeezed his eyes shut, lips pressed together and hands beginning to shake as they clutched desperately over his ears. "Trust me, Maestro. You can be with Ran. Stop it!" Maestro's voice cracked in desperation, and he felt Luck's sigh flutter across his cheeks more than he heard it. Through labored breathing and gritted teeth, he still noticed Luck shift to rub their temple. It didn't matter. It couldn't matter. It was too late. If there had been a choice this whole time, if he hadn't needed to do what he'd done, what was the point of it all? He was doing this for a reason, had made that choice of his own volition. If he had given up everything for no reason, had given up Randall for no reason, then he wouldn't be able to stand it. It was too late. It had to be. All right, Luck sighed, pressing their foreheads together. I get it. Tonight, though, you won't have any nightmares. I promise. Maestro's teeth ground together, and he made no response. With another puff of warm air, Luck lifted himself off the bed. The lack felt just as empty as the pressure had felt suffocating. Wait, he whispered, half hoping Luck wouldn't be around to hear any more. They didn't reply verbally, but he heard them shift. There was a long stretch of silence. So long that Maestro could pretend he thought they had left and were no longer there to hear his shame. You could stay on the floor if you want. He felt Luck's head rest on his hand. Sitting on the floor, draped on the bed, wasn't what Maestro had meant, but he didn't say anything. The warmth was familiar, achingly so, and he was too weak to deny himself this small comfort, even if he didn't deserve it.
Hello. This is Styx interrupting Bones' melodious voice with some judge commentary. As context for this prompt, I think I should say that I really dislike the entire concept of fate. I don't like the idea that there are any constants in the universe, any kind of necessary end. So I guess for me, it's, I feel like fate in a lot of ways takes the power out of choice. Like fate is limiting your choices, dragging you towards one outcome, no matter how little you want to go there. And it's not just about a tragic fate either. Like, I wouldn't want to be forced into a happy ending any more than I would want to be forced into a tragedy. This is, of course, a false dichotomy, the fate-choice dichotomy, because there are some concepts of fate that allow for choice. Concepts of fate where those constants, those fated truths, are just choices that you make every single time in every single universe. Choices you were never gonna not make. And that can be really interesting to me. But in general, I prefer to stay away from the idea. I prefer to think of the world as a bunch of people writing on a blank page in a million different languages, and some of it is ugly and some of it is beautiful, and none of it is decided. And all of it is decided by us as we go. That's my preferred worldview. And so I guess I was maybe fishing for something to validate that. I got some super funny and super heartfelt pieces And then I got this. And what Bones did that was so profound to me in this piece was introduce a character that wanted fate to be real, because if fate were real, then the things he did weren't really his fault. And that's just so interesting and so different from how I think about fate that it really struck me. Maestro was pushed down a specific path. My guess is that Bones will probably give you a little spiel on the background there. But even without that background knowledge, you can tell that Maestro is haunted by these past decisions that he's made, and he doesn't feel like he had a choice, because in a really real and meaningful way, he didn't. And then once he was on that path, he kept to it because it still felt inevitable even after that primary push passed, because it still felt inevitable. And the things that Maestro has lost, he apparently lost Randall, right? And that is not ever coming back. It's just so, it hits so hard to have this tragedy where, the tragedy didn't happen for a reason, but also there's something here about the way that Maestro's past is still governing his future. He thinks that he ruined a relationship, and so he continues to ruin relationships. Luck, as we can see in this piece, is very tender towards him, and he won't let himself have that warmth. And that, I think, is a really real and interesting type of predetermination, where the echoes of your past choices reach forward, and muscle memory, right? It becomes muscle memory. And you do the same things over and over and over again, because you don't know any other way. And there is no other way that you can do it, except there is. Fate isn't real, but it is. But you don't have a choice, but you do. Anyway, those are some of the thoughts, the themes that I really latched onto in this piece, and I hope that you liked it too.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here. A lot of backstory stuff, internal motivations for a guy we've previously seen only portrayed as a fundamentally nice guy, more than willing to be seen as a villain. Maestro is a very complicated character, and I love him so much, and I feel so bad about what he's been through, but also he keeps making bad decisions and ruining his own life, and I want to smack him for it sometimes. And you can talk to me about being the author and in charge of the story as much as you want, but unfortunately, I can't help Maestro be better. Maestro is just like this. That's not on me. I refuse to take responsibility for his actions. Unfortunately for the both of us. Haha, elsewise he would probably be having a better time. So I'll give a little bit more context about what's going on with luck and fate and Maestro and this whole interaction that's going on. Um, Maestro actually grew up in a very criminally minded family. They are prestigious in the community, but it's all a front, and everyone thinks they're these really cool upstanding citizens, but they're actually very underhanded and, doing whatever it takes to stay on top. And Maestro grew up in this situation and decided that he didn't want to be like them. He wanted to be an actually good person and all of this stuff, which is when he left to go to college. But right before he left was the first time he met fate, luck, and karma. Um, and luck, as we see in this, has a real soft spot for Maestro. They think Maestro is such a sad little man, and they're right, but fate hates him. Like, they just got off on the wrong foot right away. And one of the first things that fate told Maestro was that despite all of his attempts, he would end up just as bad as his family, and even worse, in fact. So, Maestro, before he even goes off to college to like distance himself from his family and ignore all this, gets this statement from fate that he is going to be worse than them. And at first he ignores it. He's like, whatever, fate isn't real. I can do what I want. Um, but then there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. Some things happen, and he starts to think that this is fate, that he can't escape it. And there are some real reasons for that, but I will not go into them here. They're like major spoilers. But basically, he starts making choices and doing things and feeling resigned to the fact that he's going to be a villain worse than his family ever was. And the poor kid, like, he tried to go against it, but then, like, he met fate themselves, and they are the one who told him that this was going to happen. And he's like, fate's real. Like, I've met them. I know them. They told me this. And I guess I can't escape it. So after the initial thing that started getting him to think like this, he kind of gives up and thinks that he can't do anything else. And yeah, so that's where we are. We're kind of on the downward spiral part of this, where he thinks that he really doesn't have a choice. And he kind of hopes that he doesn't have a choice, because if he had a choice, then he likes to think that he wouldn't have chosen to do what he did, even though he did choose to do those things, So he's a sad man, and he makes me sad. And eventually he reaches an equilibrium that we've seen in the other Scorches, where he's like, yeah, I'm a villain. That's what I do. But like, he's fundamentally an okay person. He's just like, I see, so my role is to be the villain. Which again didn't need to happen, but the way that everything shook out, it did. Anyway, other characters, I don't think Zack has been talked about explicitly. We've met Zachem, who is a clone. He's a clone of Zack, who is Maestro's cousin. And you may have gathered from the dream that they don't exactly have a great relationship, but I won't go into that now. And I also mentioned Randall. I don't think Randall has been mentioned at all in the other Scorches so far, but he was Maestro's college roommate, and for a while, Maestro and Randall were going to join the police together and make a difference. And then there was a whole lot of dramatic stuff, and Maestro ended up a supervillain, and Randall is a policeman. And Randall has no idea where everything went wrong, why it went wrong, and Maestro won't try to fix it because he knows that Randall will forgive him, and he just can't deal with that. He refuses to let someone forgive him for something that he can't forgive himself for, and honestly, that's like the root of most of his problems. Anyway, I could like sob about Maestro for years, but I don't have the time and I doubt y'all have the inclination, so we'll just leave it at that for today. Remember, on the Patreon, all the connected Scorches are labeled as Maestroverse, so you could go and find all of them. My Week 20 Ember, meaning it will only be available on the Patreon for our Sparks, is also part of the Maestroverse, so the Sparks can look forward to seeing them again pretty soon. The next time you'll hear about them on the podcast will be week 239B, which, fun fact, will be both our 100th episode and the final episode of the year. So that's like way far from now, months from now, but look forward to ending our first year with a bang in the Maestroverse. In closer news, the prompt I gave for week 223 was, I would hardly call it stabbing. Which isn't from anything specific, it's just the exact type of line a character I adore would say, and I wanted to read about fun, terrible people. Oh, and another thing I'm doing, I've got my One Piece Fleet cosplay designs on my Ko-Fi, and also I tried out for a podcast and was chosen to voice one of the characters. It's a gothic horror podcast about the Wild West, and we haven't started recording anything yet, but I will keep you updated during my episodes here, or if that sounds like the kind of show you'd like to listen to, you can follow Westward Eye Podcast on Instagram and stay updated that way. Thanks for listening. If you like our podcast, share it with your friends, take the polls on Spotify, join our Patreon for free just to show support, or pay to read our excellent embers. And, most important of all, keep that fire burning. The Cellblock Scorch is a production of Stellacore, an independent group of nerds sharing their obsessions with the world. We can be reached at thestellacore@gmail.com, through comments on your podcast platform of choice, our Instagram, Stella_core, and at our YouTube, also called Stellacore. Feel free to check out our other productions on our YouTube channel or our cosplays on Instagram. If you would like to support our creative endeavors, you can give a one-time tip to the Ko-Fi of the writer of your favorite Scorches, or check out our Patreon, linked in the show notes. There, you can access the winning Scorches and episode transcripts for free, or sign up for Spark level support for $5 a month to gain access to all of the Scorch submissions.